Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki, Santaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, all glories to the Son of the devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Ram Chaiva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Totaya Mudiraye.
Totaya Mudiraye.
Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, we should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, of the Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Sri Vyasa, the apostle. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, chapter 22, text number 40, translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Kritra Mahani Habhavarna Vamaplavesham.
Kritra Mahani Habhavarna Vamaplavesham.
Sadvarganakrama Sukhena Titishanti.
Sadvarganakrama Sukhena Titishanti.
Tatvam Hare Bhagavato Bhajaniyamam Vim.
Tatvam Hare Bhagavato Bhajaniyamam Vim.
Kritvo Drupam Yasanam Uttara Drustaranam.
Kritvo Drupam Yasanam Uttara Drustaranam.
Kritra Mahani Habhavarna Vamaplavesham.
Kritra Mahani Habhavarna Vamaplavesham.
Satvarganakrama Sukhena Titirsihanti.
Satvarganakrama Sukhena Titirsihanti.
Tatvam Hare Bhagavato Bhajaniyamam Vim.
Tatvam Hare Bhagavato Bhajaniyamam Vim.
Kritvo Drupam Yasanam Uttara Drustaranam.
Kritvo Drupam Yasanam Uttara Drustaranam.
Kritra Mahani Habhavarna Vamaplavesham.
Kritra Mahani Habhavarna Vamaplavesham.
Satvarganakrama Sukhena Titirsihanti.
Satvarganakrama Sukhena Titirsihanti.
Tatvam Hare Bhagavato Bhajaniyamam Vim.
Tatvam Hare Bhagavato Bhajaniyamam Vim.
Kritvo Drupam Yasanam Uttara Drustaranam.
Kritvo Drupam Yasanam Uttara Drustaranam.
Can we get a chair for Lavanya?
Kritra Mahani Habhavarna Vamaplavesham.
Kritra Mahani Habhavarna Vamaplavesham.
Satvarganakrama Sukhena Titirsanti.
Satvarganakrama Sukhena Titirsanti.
Tatvam Hare Bhagavato Bhajaniyamam Vim.
Tatvam Hare Bhagavato Bhajaniyamam Vim.
Bodhikam Vasanam Uttara Drustaranam.
Kritvo Drupam Yasanam Uttara Drustaranam.
Krito Mahani Habhavarna Vamaplavesham.
Kritra Mahani Habhavarna Vamaplavesham.
Sadvarganakrama Sarvarganakramasukena titirshati.
Sarvarganakramasukena titirshati.
Tattvam Hare Bhagavato Bhajaniya Mangrim.
Tattvam Hare Bhagavato Bhajaniyam Mangrim.
Kritvo Dupam Vyasanam Uttaradhistaranam.
Kritvo Dupam Vyasanam Uttaradhistaranam.
Krichro Mahaniha Vavarnavam Aplavesham.
Kricho Mahaniha Vavarnavam Aplavesham.
Sadvarganakram Asukena Titirsanti.
Sadvarganakramasukena titirsanti.
Tattvam Harer Bhagavato Bhajaniyam Mangrim.
Tattvam Hare Bhagavato Bhajaniyam Mangrim.
Kritvo Rupam Vyasanam Uttaradustaranam.
Kritvo Dupam Vyasanam Uttaradhistaranam.
Kricho Mahaniha Vavarnavam Aplavesham.
Kricho Mahaniha Vavarnavam Aplavesham.
Sarvarganakramasukena titirshati.
Sarvarganakramasukena titirshati.
Tattvam Hare Bhagavato Bhajaniyam Mangrim.
Tattvam Hare Bhagavato Bhajaniyam Mangrim.
Kritvo Dupam Vyasanam
Kritvo Dupam Vyasanam Uttaradhistaranam.
Word meanings. Kritra,
Kritra,
troublesome.
troublesome.
Mahan,
Mahan,
very great.
very great.
Viha,
Viha,
here,
here,
in this life.
in this life.
Bhava Arnavam,
Bhava Arnavam,
ocean of material existence.
ocean of material existence.
Aplavayusham,
Aplavayusham,
of the non-devotees
of the non-devotees,
who have not taken shelter
That
of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Sadvarga,
Sadvarga,
six senses.
six senses.
Nakram,
Nakram,
sharks.
Sharks.
Asukena,
Asukena,
great difficulty.
great difficulty.
Tirshanti,
Tirshanti,
crossover.
crossover.
Tat,
Tat,
therefore.
therefore,
Tvam,
Tvam,
you.
you.
Hare,
Hare,
of the personality of Godhead.
of the Personality of Godhead.
Bhagavata,
Bhagavata,
of the Supreme.
of the Supreme.
Vajaniyam,
Janiyam,
worthy of worship.
worthy of worship.
Amhim,
Amhim,
the lotus feet.
lotus feet.
Kritva,
Kritva,
making.
making.
Udabam,
Udabam,
boat.
boats.
Vyasanam,
Vyasanam,
all kinds of dangers.
all kinds of dangers.
Uttara,
Uttara,
crossover.
crossover.
Dustara,
Dustara,
very difficult.
very difficult.
Arnam,
Arnam,
the ocean. Translation. The ocean of nescience is very difficult to cross because it is infested with many dangerous sharks. Although those who are non-devotees undergo severe austerities and penances to cross that ocean, we recommend that you simply take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, which are like boats for crossing the ocean. Although the ocean is difficult to cross, by taking shelter of his lotus feet, you will overcome all dangers. Purport. Material existence is compared herein to the great ocean of nescience. Another name of the ocean is Vaitarani. In that Vaitarani ocean, which is the causal ocean, there are innumerable universes floating like footballs. On the other side of the ocean is the spiritual world of Vaikuntha, which is described in Bhagavad Gita 8:20 as Parastasmat Tribhavaniya. Thus, there is an ever-existing spiritual nature which is beyond this material nature. Even though all material universes are annihilated again and again in the causal ocean, the Vaikuntha planets, which are spiritual, exist eternally and are not subject to dissolution. The human form of life gives the living entity a chance to cross the ocean of nescience, which is this material universe, and enter into the spiritual sky. Although there are many methods or boats by which one can cross the ocean, the Kumaras recommend that the king take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, just as one would take shelter of a good boat. Non-devotees who do not take shelter of the Lord's lotus feet try to cross the ocean of nescience by other methods, karma, jnana, and yoga. But they have a great deal of trouble. Indeed, sometimes they become so busy simply enjoying their troubles that they never cross the ocean. There is no guarantee that the non-devotees will cross the ocean, but even though they manage to cross, they have to undergo severe austerities and penances. On the other hand, anyone who takes to the process of devotional service and has faith that the lotus feet of the Lord are safe boats to cross that ocean is certain to cross very easily and comfortably. Ritu Maharaj is therefore advised to take the boat of the lotus feet of the Lord to easily cross over all dangers. Dangerous elements in the universe are compared to sharks in the ocean. Even though one may be a very expert swimmer, he cannot possibly survive if he is attacked by sharks. One often sees that many so-called swamis and yogis sometimes advertise themselves as competent to cross the ocean of nescience and to help others cross, but in actuality they are found to be simply victims of their own senses. Instead of helping their followers to cross the ocean of nescience, such swamis and yogis fall prey to Maya, represented by the fair sex, woman, and are thus devoured by the sharks in that ocean. Om Jnanatinarandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. The spiritual masters opened my eyes, I was born in the darkness of ignorance. The spiritual masters opened my darkened eyes, which were spread knowledge after my spectral basins and his Lord's feet. Shall we go boating here? I think it's going to be easy to give class today because that kirtan was so ecstatic. It kind of brought the whole energy up to that transcendental level. Thank you, kirtan. There are a lot of ocean verses. I would say there's probably, if not hundreds, maybe thousands. And often referring to the material world as an ocean, but also the ocean of love of God. And we have the first Purusha avatar, Karanadakasai Vishnu is in the causal ocean. Then he expands himself into Garbhodakasai Vishnu, and then there's an ocean on the bottom of the universe. And then on each planet, there are various oceans. Here we have a saltwater ocean, but we hear of other planets. We have the ocean of milk and Sweta Deep, and there are oceans of ghee and oceans of elixirs or liquors and all sorts of oceans. So we're really into oceans in Christian consciousness. And I'm going to San Diego in a month, so I'm looking forward to seeing the ocean. And Krishna says in the 10th chapter, of bodies of water, I'm the ocean. So we're really into oceans in Krishna consciousness. And Krishna's Karuna Sindhu. He's an ocean of mercy. So lots of ocean meditations in Krishna consciousness. So, this word Sharanagati, which is sometimes referred to as surrender, but it means taking shelter. Sharanagati, Sharana, shelter, and Gati means where do you go. And really they're kind of synonymous, shelter and surrender. And I thought maybe we'd reframe surrender or what does it mean to surrender? What does it mean to take shelter? Here we're talking about taking shelter of the boat of the lotus feet of the Lord. And in the 4th chapter in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that even if you're considered the most sinful person, if you're situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you can easily cross over the ocean of material miseries. And we were just singing Prabhupada's the prayer to Srila Prabhupada, to the Guru, that by his grace one can cross the ocean of material suffering, the first verse. So that's Bhava, or Bhava. There's Bhava and there's Bhava. Bhava is emotion, is feeling, and Bhava means material existence, which is here and elsewhere compared to an insurmountable ocean. And not only is it, I was in San Diego one time, and I'm from Minnesota, so I didn't know anything about the ocean. When I came and I joined the temple in San Diego, and we'd go on Harinam every day, and then after Harinam, we'd go to the ocean, go swimming. And one time I went to the ocean, and I wasn't with the group of devotees, and being a little naive, being from Minnesota, I didn't understand the whole thing about riptide or undertow. So I was bopping around in the ocean, having a grand old time, and meanwhile I was being sucked out over my head. And then suddenly this huge wave came and just picked me up. And when these waves when you're closer to the shore, when the big wave pulls up, you can actually see the bed, the ocean bed. So I got picked up by this wave, and I'm like looking down, and then I can see the sand of the ocean bed, and I got bang! I got slammed into the, and I was so disoriented. It was like, I was like, and then the whole churning of the wave, and I'm swimming around like I didn't know what end was up, and I was like, just went frantically. So then I finally get up to the top, and here comes another wave, and the same thing lifts me up, bam, smashes me down. And so the ocean, that's just, by the beach there. Can you imagine? I've never been out in the middle of the ocean, but I was watching these videos of these like super waves that, there's these big ships, and then these swells where it's like 100 feet, a swell where, you go down, and these big giant aircraft carriers or these, what do you call, container ships, they're huge. But next to the ocean, they're like little nothings. And the ship would like be down in the, what do you call it, is it the swell?
Trough.
The trough. And then you can't even see, like the wave is, it's the surging wave, it's so huge. So the power of the ocean is so appropriate. Like when we realize how fragile, there was a song by Sting, how fragile we are. We're just so vulnerable. And the material mentality is, I'm invulnerable, like Hiranyakashipu, we're going to be hearing about Nrsimhadev slaying Hiranyakashipu. And he had, so much so-called power. I mean, he dominated the universe. He subjugated all the devas, and everybody would tremble at if he would raise his eyebrow. But Hiranyakashipu, as powerful as he was just like a little, what do we see? He was like a little wasp that Nrsimhadev chops up. So we have, Srila Prabhupada said, chant to be happy. What is the difficulty? The process is very simple, and here it's saying one can very easily cross the ocean if we take shelter of the boat of the lotus feet of the Lord. So why does it seem so difficult? If it's so easy, why are we struggling so much? And Srila Prabhupada writes that the process of devotional service is very simple, but the application is a little difficult. That's sort of like the understatement of the year. the application, in the 4th chapter in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that when you're freed from attachment, fear, and anger, then you'll be able to take refuge in the Lord. And Krishna says, many, many persons in the past have done it. And thus, they became purified by this knowledge, and thus they attained transcendental love for me. So, there was one, Nirantara Swami was given a class, and I don't remember who the devotee was, but they were asking Prabhupada, why is Maya so powerful? And Prabhupada replied, because your purpose is weak. It's our desire. Our desire is not that strong. And Arjuna queries Krishna, he says, what is it that impels us to engage in unbeneficial activities that seemingly engaged by foot? We know it's not good for us, but yet we're overcome. And Krishna says, Kama Isha, Krodha Isha, Rajaguna Samudvara. Mahasana, Mahapatma, Vidyena, Niyamarina. It's this strong material desire, lust, kama, which later degrades into wrath, anger, and which is the greatest enemy of the conditioned soul. So in one sense, we're our own worst enemy. And where do these desires, where are they lodged? Krishna says this lust in the 3rd chapter, he said the enemy has taken different strategic places in the mind, in the senses, in the intelligence. So we're given a heads up. This is where the problem is. The problem is not outside of us. The problem is inside. It's our own heart. And Krishna consciousness, this nice devotee, Madhana Gopal, he's the president in New Jersey. I think he's the president. Or at least he's a leader in that part of the country. And he came from a Hindu background. He was born in Kenya. And it was one of those countries where I don't know if it was the British brought in Indians for low-cost labor, slave labor, whatever. They call it indentured servants. And he said, I didn't join Krishna consciousness for religion. I joined it for a transformation of heart. That's why, and sometimes we have to revisit why we are coming to Krishna consciousness, or why we came to Krishna consciousness. Because we can get caught up in the details rather than the principle. And sometimes the novelty of, new culture, new food, new music, new clothes, new everything. It's very wonderful. The culture is very wonderful. But sometimes we can forget that what is the essence of Krishna consciousness? It's a transformation of our heart. And we can mistake the external cultural accoutrements as being the goal, to become very expert at ritual, or become very learned in philosophy, become very expert at puja. But what it really boils down to is relationship with Krishna. And Krishna told her, so many verses in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I'm your friend. You're my friend, I'm your friend. And because you're my friend and my devotee, therefore you can understand the transcendental mystery of this science. In the beginning of the 10th chapter, he said, because you're my friend, I will again now tell you something even more deeper than what I've previously explained. And then in the very end of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, think of me, become my devotee, offer obeisance to me, worship me. I promise you will come to me. You're very dear to me. You're a very dear friend. So in terms of surrender and shelter, this conviction that Krishna's my best friend, it's not so much this hierarchy thing that it's important for managing life in the material world. We need some hierarchy, we need leaders. And there's hierarchy between parents and children, or teachers and students. But Krishna's really, he doesn't like the hierarchy. He likes to be ordered by his devotee. You know, here's the supreme authority, the Lord of the whole universe, the source of all creation, and he's being chased by Mother Yashoda with a stick. He enjoys that more than being honored by very elaborate pujas and sacrifices. That he'd rather have Mother Yashoda chase him with a stick. He'd rather have the cowherd boys jump on his shoulders. He doesn't want to be the big cheese, as we say. He wants to be a friend. So, but who are you going to trust? Or friendship. What is friendship? What is any relationship based on? It's based on trust. So, faith is as Bhaktivedanta Maharaj, the petrol. He was in London. He said, faith is the petrol that bhakti runs on. You have an engine and you fuel. So, what is the transformation of heart? It's this deepening of faith. The whole progression of the Tao Shraddha, Sadhusanga, Bhajana Kriya, Nishta, it's all a development of faith. It's a condensation, or it's a thickening. It's developing more and more trust in Krishna. And without that trust, how will we surrender? How will we take shelter of Krishna? If we don't have confidence, just like Prabhupada's giving the example that, the Lord's feet are a very suitable boat. But if you went to the marina down in San Diego, if I went to the marina, I wanted to take a charter, and there's some old beat up boat, and there's some drunken captain, like how eager are you going to get on that boat? But if there was a really nice boat that was very, nicely painted and structurally very sound, and there was like a uniformed captain there, you'd be a little more confident. So there's a verse in I think it's the 11th canto. It says that the human form of life is just like a boat, which is very suitable to cross this ocean of material existence. And the spiritual master is a very qualified captain. And the Vedic hymns, Krishna's instructions, are very favorable breezes that can carry us across. So it's like the wedding party. You're rowing, but you can't get anywhere because the anchor, something's holding us down. So what is it? We're in Krishna consciousness, we're chanting Hare Krishna, we're following the process. Why do we feel like we're not really developing a relationship with Krishna? And we have little glimmers. But Krishna's especially extending himself through the devotee. So our friendship with devotees is synonymous with our relationship with Krishna. The friends that we develop in Krishna, the trust that we have in one another, Krishna or Prabhupada described, our society is built on love and trust. So if we see the absolute nature of Krishna consciousness, that Krishna and his devotees are inseparable. And where's this problem that we have with loneliness? The worst punishment in prison is to be in solitary confinement. We're social beings. Where does that come from? It comes from Krishna. Krishna doesn't like to be alone. He's always surrounded by his devotees, and because we're a part and parcel of Krishna, we don't like to be alone. Sometimes we need a little solitude to recharge our batteries, but But it's relationship. That's what bhakti, the essence of bhakti is relationship with Krishna and his devotees. So, examining our heart, like what are the obstacles to us developing real trust and confidence in each other? That's the science of bhakti. So, Krishna is saying, being free from attachment, fear, and anger, you can take refuge in me. So we have to play our role. We have to weed the garden of the heart and look to see where's the attachments. Where's my attachment to unnecessary sense gratification? What is the fear of personal relationship? We've been traumatized by different relationships in the material world. So it's no surprise that we're hesitant to become vulnerable. Because when you open your heart to someone, and if they take advantage of that, and they can hurt you so bad, it's like, ooh, the heart is just pierced. And then what happens when you get cut? There's scar tissue that develops, and that scar tissue is just kind of tough. So we've got like our heart has been cut, and we got like scar tissue around our heart. Like we're very cautious about being vulnerable. Letting someone into our inner sanctum, letting people be aware of our weaknesses. That's to be vulnerable. And that doesn't mean we have to walk around and be vulnerable to everybody, but we need to have relationships with devotees that we can be vulnerable with. We say, this is what I'm struggling with. And not have this veneer of like, I've got it all together. And if I just follow, very rigidly the sadhana, I'm going to, like my Guru Maharaj said, sometimes we can become sadhana champions, it's like some kind of gymnastic exercise, let's see how strict we can be in our sadhana. But what happens when we become unnecessary austerities, the heart becomes a little hard. Because there's pride, just like Durvasa Muni, he was a very austere yogi, but he had a tendency to get angry and curse people. So the indication that we're actually progressing in Krishna consciousness is that our heart is becoming soft. We're becoming more compassionate, and we're feeling for the suffering of others. Alan was sitting in a park, and this homeless man came up to him, no shoes, and his feet were all black, and he didn't know if it was bloody or not, but he was just all disheveled. And he came up to Alan and he said, "Hey man, you got any shoes?" And Alan paused for a bit, and he said he has these flip-flops that he keeps in his trunk, that when he goes swimming and he goes into the shower, he uses his flip-flops. And he said, I paused for a minute and I said, yeah, I got some. And he gave some of these flip-flops to this fellow. So there's this, we have, Prabhupada emphasize often, the real welfare work, the real charity is to bring a person closer to Krishna. But sometimes in our material condition, if we're in too much distress, emotionally or physically, it's difficult to execute devotional service. So sometimes we have to be very sensitive to people's condition, their material condition. Krishna consciousness is very holistic. It's mind, body, and soul. It's not just soul. Atma refers to mind, body, and soul. So they all have to be in alignment. There's not a separate material life and spiritual life. Urmila was asked, how do we balance our spiritual and material life? And Urmila went, what's the question of balance? There's only one thing. There's only spiritual life. He said, you may have to prioritize your time And that's maybe what the question was, like, how do I prioritize my time? But taking care of our body, taking care of our emotional health, it's all part of our devotional service. It's not separate. So, being sensitive, being compassionate on all levels, mind, body, and soul, is indicative that we're making progress. So I'm going to stop because tomorrow is Jayananda Prabhu's disappearance day. And I'm not, because we have Maha cleanup in the morning, I don't know if there's going to be any Jayananda Prabhu.
And food for life.
Yeah. So I'd like to hear, your realizations, but I would also like to share with you some nectar from Jayananda Prabhu. So let me read these little things about Jayananda, and then maybe that'll stimulate some, if we have time remaining, we can discuss any of the points we made. So these are 3 letters, excerpts from letters that two of them Prabhupada wrote to Jayananda, and one was to Rameshwar. So these letters were written by Srila Prabhupada shortly before and after Jayananda's death. To Jayananda Das, February 26, 1977. This body is today or tomorrow finished. We should not be very much bothered about the body. Trees also live for thousands of years, but that does not mean a successful life. A successful life is one of Krishna consciousness. By the grace of Krishna, from the very beginning, you are a devotee, and that is the real profit of your life. About a sadhu, it is said, Jiva va mana va. A sadhu may live or die. It doesn't matter. While living, he is engaged in Krishna conscious business, and when dying, he goes back home, back to Godhead. So this is another letter to Jayananda on May 5th, 1977, and I'm not sure if he actually had already left at this point.
Yeah, he had.
Okay. I am feeling very intensely your separation. In 1967, you joined me in San Francisco. You were driving my car and chanting Hare Krishna. You were the first man to give me some contribution, $5,000 for printing my Bhagavad Gita. After that, you have rendered very favorable service to Krishna in different ways. I so hope at the time of your death you were remembering Krishna, and as such, you have been promoted to the eternal association of Krishna. If not, if you had any tinge of material desire, you have gone to the celestial kingdom to live with the demigods for many thousands of years and enjoy the most opulent life of material existence. From there, you can promote yourself to the spiritual world. But even if one fails to promote himself to the spiritual world, at that time, he comes down again on the surface of the globe and takes birth in a big family like a yogi's or a brahmana's or an aristocratic family, where there is again chance of reviving Krishna consciousness. But as you were hearing Krishna Kirtan, I am sure that you were directly promoted to Krishna Loka. Janma karma chame divyam evam yogiti tattvadah tyakta deham punarjanma naitima mriti sarjana. Krishna has done a great favor to you, not to continue your diseased body, and has given you a suitable place for your service. Thank you very much. And to Rameshwar Das, like a week later, May 11th, 1977. Jayananda's death is glorious. It is very good that he had stated, what is the use of such a useless body? Better to give it up. He has left his body very wonderfully, and he has been transferred to Vaikuntha. I have already sent a condolence letter for publication in Bhakti Gita. Everyone should follow the example of Jayananda. I'm very proud that I have such a nice disciple. If possible, Jayananda's picture should be hung in the Rath of Lord Jagannath. And in all of our temples, a day may be set aside for holding a festival in his honor, just as we do on the disappearance day of the other great Vaishnavas. So this is a nice reflection from Gunagrai Maharaj that's dated October 2009. I love Jayananda Prabhu's association. Krishna. I used to travel with Gunagrai Maharaj. He took me. I struggled a lot, and it was tough for me in the ashram. And Gunagrai Maharaj, he had a motor home, and he traveled and preached, and he took me under his wing. So it's very brings out a lot of emotion. Sorry. Around 1977, when I was the temple president in San Diego, I needed to take a break, so I went to join one of the Radha Damodar bus parties. I thought I would try Guru Das's bus in Oregon, but he, along with Parirajkacharya Maharaj, left the party, and when I went up there, to my surprise, Jayananda Prabhu was the Sankirtan leader. I was amazed by Jayananda Prabhu's attitude. He would always clean up after all the young men and was constantly serving them. He was very kind to everybody, very compassionate, and enthusiastic about every service he rendered. He never found fault with anyone, and never complained about anything or anyone. He would go out all day on book distribution, every day. Jayananda was not only the Sankirtan leader, but also the driver of the van. One day I was the last to get out and was sitting with him, talking for a while before leaving. He took out a big bowl of halava and began eating and eating. Then he said to me, I always get a little nervous before I go out on Sankirtan, and this halava really calms me down and relaxes me. I really love this halava. It was very sweet to see how he so unabashedly took shelter of prasad. That same day, I was the first to get picked up, and again, Jayananda and I spent some time talking. He confided in me, this Sankirtan is just so wonderful, so enlivening. It is the most enlivening thing I have ever experienced. I have finally found a service I can see myself doing for the rest of my life. I was really struck by that because he was older, very mature, and qualified in so many ways. He could have assumed any number of leadership positions, but was completely happy serving Prabhupada by living a simple life, preaching alongside the brahmacharis and helping them grow in spiritual life. One weekend afternoon while in Eugene, Oregon doing Sankirtan, one of the devotees heard that there was a mind, body, spirit festival going on and informed us all when he returned to the bus. Although the festival was due to wind down soon, when Jayananda heard the news, he immediately lit up and sprang into action. Quick! We need to make a lot of sweet balls and distribute prasadam to everybody. I remember thinking as we mixed, mashed, and mushed together all the ingredients for the sweet balls that I had never in my life seen so many opulent ingredients in one preparation. Cream cheese and walnuts and dates and almonds and figs and dried pineapple and dried papaya, and the devotees became really fired up seeing the sweet balls take shape and were rolling them frantically to get them finished before the festival ended. Finally, we had a few hundred made, offered them, and then sped off. The festival was in a big gymnasium and had just begun to wind down when we got there. I felt a little intimidated by all the stares as we walked in, but had not even a minute to wallow in my fears before I heard the next command from our Sankirtan general. Okay, Prabhus, Harinam, follow me. Jayananda then started chanting and dancing with the greatest enthusiasm, and we all found ourselves swept up right behind him. We circumambulated along the perimeter of the gym where the booths were set up, and Jayananda was chanting and dancing like a madman. The sweet balls were going out as fast as we could distribute them, and all the people who moments before were looking at us like, who the heck are these guys? began chanting and dancing along with us. I still remember the smiles on their faces as many of them joined our transcendental parade. It was an experience to behold and one that I often remember. In just a few minutes, Jayananda had completely transformed that gymnasium into Vaikuntha and given everyone a taste of the spiritual realm they had spent all day long futilely trying to grasp. Either later that year or during the next year, we found out that Jayananda had cancer and had been receiving various allopathic treatments. However, they were not helping very much. He was averse to spending so much money on them, and most important, they were affecting his ability to think clearly and meditate on Krishna. Thus, he decided to try a natural cure and found out that in Tijuana, Mexico, right across the border from San Diego, there was a facility that administered one with considerable success. We helped Jayananda Prabhu get set up in the clinic, and I started going down weekly to see him. On my first visit, I saw he was really ecstatic. He said, "This is fantastic. I am reading the Bhagavad Gita daily. I've never been able to absorb myself as much as I can now. I'm getting so many realizations, and every day I give classes to the other patients. I am so enlivened. I've never done anything like this before. It is giving me so much life. Plus, the Leia Trail seems to be helping, so I'm really satisfied being here." The following week I returned, but this time when I asked him how things were going, he said, "I'm leaving. Let's get out of here." Surprised at the drastic change, I asked him what had happened. He said, "They told me I couldn't give class anymore, that it was against the rules to preach the Bhagavad Gita or teach religion of any kind." He continued, "What's the use of being here if I can't preach? What's the use of living if I can't preach? Let's go." I was amazed, truly amazed. I had never seen him so grave and determined. And while on one hand I was extremely disappointed at the turn of events, I became very much enlivened to witness the fearlessness, the detachment, the detachment, and the utter resolve of this great devotee who wanted nothing more than to live the rest of his life preaching, no matter how short a time that might wind up being. Jayananda Prabhu had already packed his belongings, and we immediately headed back to San Diego. He remained there for a while, giving classes and constantly commenting on how amazing the Bhagavad Gita was and how many realizations one could get by reading it. After a few weeks, he decided to go to Los Angeles as his health had started deteriorating again, and he would get much better attention and facilities there and have much more senior association. I continued to meditate on Jayananda Prabhu quite often, especially when in need of the tolerance, enthusiasm, and compassion necessary to push on and to please Srila Prabhupada the way I know he always did. Jai. And here's a very short poem, 3 lines, called Prabhupada's Sun, Prabhupada's Moon. Prabhupada's full moon beams upon my heart's lotus. Guru's service blooms. I'm not sure who wrote that. So Jayananda Prabhu seems to, this whole verse, taking shelter of Krishna and transcending or crossing the ocean of material existence. You know, when we have examples like this, and I don't know if it was Kalakanta's, we always used to read that article that he had written about Jayananda, and he was saying how significant it was that Jayananda left before Prabhupada, so that Prabhupada could confirm his successfully going back to Godhead. And when we glorify Srila Prabhupada's followers, this is glorifying Prabhupada. It's synonymous because Prabhupada, and this is something by Chaitanya Prabhu had said too, that the fact that Prabhupada was so potent, so pure, that he could uplift even the most fallen of us and reinstate us in our constitutional position at Krishna's lotus feet. The shelter is, which means here, the shelter of the Lord's lotus feet. And, I was thinking about Prabhupada's pranam, and I'm saying pranam that we, the first line, that, and also Govinda's, Govinda Das's song about Abhay Charna in the Bhaja Hare Mana, being fearless, having taken shelter of Krishna's lotus feet in Prabhupada's name of Abhay Charna. And Prabhupada was speaking about the glories of chanting Hare Krishna. Was one, I think it was a Sunday feast lecture, and a guest was challenging, and he said, "So what do you experience when you chant Hare Krishna?" And Prabhupada, without a moment's hesitation, said, "I feel no fear." So we mentioned how, what's holding us back from surrendering to Krishna. There's this doubt, there's this fear, there's this hesitation. Krishna says, "Surrender unto me, do not fear." So what is it? It's this relationship that we have to develop, evolve our faith so that we can be confident. And Rupa Goswami says, "Utsaha nisthaya darya." This confidence is necessary in Krishna consciousness. And when we have association with great souls like Jayananda Prabhu, then they instill that confidence in us, because we can see they have it. They're fearless, having taken shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. So then by that association, we can also, and by serving such great souls, we imbibe their qualities. So nice meditation to help us succeed in Krishna consciousness, meditate on these great souls and pray for their mercy. We have a couple minutes if anyone has a realization. Yes, Prabhu.
I was in LA when Jayananda passed away, and a lot of the devotees here know that because I've told the story. But after San Diego, Jayananda Prabhu, he did go to LA, and I believe he convinced Ramaswara that we have to have a Rath Yatra here. They hadn't had a Rath Yatra. So his last devotional project was designing and overseeing the construction of the cart. In the beginning, I think he was able to actually help with the men building it, but then he got more and more disabled. But he was always checking on it. And if you know the LA temple, if you're looking at the temple, it was right to the right of the temple, and that what used to be a parking lot. Maybe it is again, I don't know. Anyway, that's where they built the cart. I'll get a little time. Okay, so, he came, what did it say, March he came or February? Yeah, February, March. Yeah, I was working at the BBT. And I gave class one day. I gave a Bhagavatam class. And it's about Pritamara or something. I forget. And then all I remember I don't remember anything except Jayananda came up to me after the class and he asked me a question about Indra. And I don't remember what the question was. I just remember how he asked it. It was like he was coming to me, Prabhu, I need to understand something. And he asked it with such absolute humility, I was just blown away. I don't even know what I said. But he was a genuinely humble person, even though he, like you say, he was so qualified and he knew so much. But he was so humble. And I'll just fast forward to the end. So by the end, I think it was May 1st, the day he passed away, but just before then, he was in a wheelchair by then. He could hardly see, he could hardly eat, but he was still overseeing. And he passed away on a Sunday morning, and it was the Thursday, we surprised him with a surprise party. James Kaur, who became Jayananda Prabhu, had his 38th birthday. He had his 38th birthday just before, passed away. So we wheeled him, his servant, Indradev, wheeled him to the parking lot, ostensibly to see how the carts were doing. But actually, the whole community was there in the parking lot, 400 people in this parking lot. And then he saw what was going on. And even though he could hardly, it was so hard for him to speak, he regaled us with stories from the first Rath Yatra in San Francisco, 67, which he was there for, of course, the flatbed truck or trailer truck, all the way, every one he told about, until he came to this building of this cart. And then, and everybody's like spellbound, spellbound. And then there's a big cake that the ladies had made for his birthday. And he couldn't eat anything. He couldn't eat. But he forced himself, because it had been offered to Lord Jagannath. He forced himself to take some cake. And all I remember was all the cake would just fall all over his mouth, it was just all these crumbs. But he forced to swallow some cake. And then Indradev, later he told us, I was wheeling him, and then he was wheeled out of the lot, back to the green building where he was staying, and then as Indradev was wheeling him back, Jayananda said, Indradev, this weekend, I'm going this weekend. So he kind of knew, he was, so anyway, the night before, Saturday night, the night before he left, he was in his death throes, and he was in a delirium. But what was that delirium? He was calling out orders. You gotta call that shop. You gotta call that, you gotta get this tool, you gotta get this wood, this is what you gotta do for the next. He was in samadhi. He was in complete samadhi. And this devotee, Prabhu, who was president then, I think, yeah. He heard it through the walls, the thin walls of the green building. And then he called Anadi. And Anadi is devotee in LA. And he came into the room and he saw what was going on, that Jayananda is passing away, he's in his final moments. So then he called Ramaswar and they all came in the room. And this was happening right as Mangalarti was approaching. So I was, as I still am, I was late for Mangalarti. I ran up the steps, to push they had these doors then, it was just push doors. And then before I could push the handle, this devotee, Jim Sullivan, who was the typical person that Jayananda would engage, he would engage all the people that nobody else could engage because they were too rough and tough and hard to, but they all loved Jayananda. So anyway, before I could push the door, Jim rushes out of the temple room with a garland. It was Lord Jagannath's garland, I found out later. He ran across the street. He knew what was going on. He ran in the room. He garlands Jayananda, who was lying on his side because he couldn't chant, but because his throat was choked up, right? And he was hearing Hare Krishna Kirtan. Prabhupada said, because you were hearing Hare Krishna Kirtan at the end of your life, it is sure and certain you've gone directly to Golok, back home, back to Godhead. So that's what's going on. And then in the temple, the conch shells are blowing. And Jayananda, he's garlanded, and he leaves. It was like a storybook departure. And we didn't know what was going on in the temple room, but all we knew is that everybody's like, we were, from the time that Mangalarti started, we were like flying. We didn't know what was happening. There was some energy going on. Jayananda was going back to Godhead. And then after the conch blows, and we were just flying the whole time. It wasn't like it started and then it built, it was just like flying. And then Ramaswar comes running in, and he takes the mic before this ring and he says, Jayananda Prabhu has just passed. He's just going back home, back to Godhead. And we went, Hari Bol. We said, that's what's going on. Yeah. So,
There's 9:02, we better
okay, there's a lot more, but
yeah, we can, during breakfast, maybe. Sure, we're
That
right there.
was fantastic.
Thank you very much.
yeah.
Maharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Sri Jayananda Prabhu ki, Hare Krishna.
And much is the movie.
Hari Bol.
Thank you, Ganga.
Yeah.